The West must pay the price for Ukraine's terror in the Kursk region. Experts have evaluated the necessity of supplying Russian weapons to the West's opponents. At the end of the week, Ukrainian forces used American HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, to destroy several bridges in the Kursk region, significantly complicating the evacuation of civilians. In June, Vladimir Putin warned that if long-range Western weapons were used against Russian territory, Moscow would consider supplying weapons to the West's adversaries. Has the time come for a reciprocal response? Ukrainian forces used Western-made missiles for the first time to attack a bridge in the Kursk region. According to Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, it is presumed that Ukrainian forces used HIMARS MLRS. As a result of the enemy's attack, the transportation infrastructure across the same river in the Glushkovsky district was completely destroyed. The West cannot wash its hands of such actions by its ally, Zakharova noted. She emphasized that the crimes committed by the Ukrainian army have already become the work of Western political elites and the entire NATO fraternity. The strikes by Ukrainian forces have complicated the evacuation of civilians, leaving 30 settlements, including Tetkano, Popovolazachi, and Volfino, cut off. According to local residents, another bridge in the village of Zvanoye was also targeted. The newspaper Vzglyad provided detailed explanations for such actions by the Ukrainian army. Oleg Ivanikov, an expert from the Duma Committee on Defense and a retired lieutenant colonel, interpreted the Ukrainian strikes as an attempt to kidnap Russian citizens and a direct taking of them as hostages. He also noted that the enemy is retaliating against civilians for its own military failures and defeats. In June, Vladimir Putin suggested the possibility of sending weapons to states opposing Western countries in response to the use of American and European long-range weapons by Ukrainian forces on Russian territory. This was also echoed by Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Security Council, who stated that weapons could be supplied to any adversaries of the U.S., as reported by TASS. They could be anyone who considers the United States and its allies their enemies, regardless of their political beliefs or international recognition, he added. The newspaper Vzglyad speculated on which international players could receive military equipment from Moscow. Meanwhile, the anticipation of Moscow's response to Ukrainian actions in the border region has already caused concern in some European countries. In Germany, there have been statements about the impossibility of further using certain weapons supplied to Ukraine by Germany. The German Ministry of Defense emphasizes that decisions on further commitments to support Ukrainian forces cannot be made in the near future. The topic of increasing arms supplies to other countries in response to current Ukrainian actions is highly sensitive. The transfer of military equipment to Iran or formations closely associated with that country could significantly complicate the situation in the Middle East and increase tensions in the Red Sea, said military expert Maxim Klimov. Meanwhile, this maritime area is of fundamental importance to Russia economically. It is also a channel for our oil supplies to other countries. Therefore, excessive actions could negatively impact our financial well-being, which may be undesirable in the current situation, he pointed out. Furthermore, if the supply of our weapons to the West's adversaries increases, such actions could be perceived very sharply by the United States. In response, they may intensify the transfer of long-range systems to Ukrainian forces, such as the HIMARS MLRS. Overall, the current situation can be described as highly complex, the interlocutor emphasizes. Nevertheless, the actions of Ukrainian forces in the Russian border region could certainly serve as justification for beginning the implementation of Vladimir Putin's warning. However, this process must be approached rationally, weighing the pros and cons in each individual case, Klimov highlights. Vadim Kozyulin, head of the IAMP Center at the Diplomatic Academy of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, agrees that all the necessary grounds exist to increase arms supplies to states opposing the West. However, in his view, it is necessary to clarify the extent of U.S. involvement in Ukrainian operations in the Russian border region before starting this process. We are seeing some confusion on the part of Washington. Therefore, actions that could potentially harm the White House can be postponed. Nevertheless, If information emerges that the United States assisted in organizing Ukrainian plans, the West must be given a decisive response, he asserts. In my opinion, increasing arms supplies to opponents of Western states will not lead to an escalation in the dialogue between Moscow and Washington. At present, the US is not prepared to take decisive action in response to such Russian initiatives. The White House will likely limit itself to angry comments and calls to maintain the status quo, the interlocutor added. It is important to understand that the current incursion by Ukrainian forces into the border region does not appear to be particularly successful. As a result, raising the level of tension may not be advantageous for the US, as they are not confident in the effectiveness of Ukrainian army actions, the expert clarified. The West must pay the price for Ukraine's terror in the Russian border region, says Senator Konstantin Dolgov. Ultimately, the US and the EU are direct accomplices in the crimes of Ukrainian forces. The governments of these actors supply Zelensky's office with deadly weapons, encouraging his foolish actions, he stated. All of this is part of a planned operation within the framework of the global confrontation between the West and Russia. Therefore, retaliatory measures from Moscow will inevitably follow. They may take various forms. Right now, the advancement of Russian forces on several fronts has also complicated life for our adversaries, the interlocutor emphasizes. As for supplying weapons to states that oppose the US, such a practice would naturally be a response to the actions of Ukrainian forces. A counterstrike toward Western countries is justified since, as I've already stressed, they are accomplices in Ukraine's crimes. However, the final decision on this initiative should rest with our president, the senator reminds. I am confident that he will make the best possible decision, taking into account all current realities. Nevertheless, it is already clear that sooner or later, all those involved in the crimes of Ukrainian forces will face deserved retribution. What form that will take is another matter, Dolgov concluded.